Welcome back to Big Brave Business. I'm your host, Sarah K. Heater. Big Brave Business is a podcast where we challenge the status quo of traditional business practices. So if you're ready to challenge norms, rewrite the rules, and redefine what it means to lead with courage and integrity, then grab a notebook and let's dive in. Welcome back to Big Brave Business. My guest today is my good friend, long-term business bestie, Cheryl Ham. Cheryl is the creative mind and hands behind Hypnotic Yarn and the Yarnable subscription box, delighting knitters around the world with curated yarn surprises month after month. Drawing from her personal journey and experiences, Cheryl now coaches creative entrepreneurs, helping them grow and thrive in their handmade businesses. Oh, welcome to the podcast, Cheryl.
Sarah, oh my goodness, can I hire you to record that intro for me so I can play it in all the places on my personal website?
How about I just go with you live wherever you're getting introduced and I'll just be like the MC.
I like that. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. I'm so excited to be here.
I am thrilled. I think this is going to be such a fun conversation, not just because obviously we've been friends for a long time, but also long time is relative. My business is 5 years old. For more than half of those years, I've been friends with you. That's not like a long time friendship, I guess, in life, but in business, it's a long time for me.
Yeah.
And so I already know that I love hanging out with you. And then also, I had, and I don't even remember exactly where or what I posted, but I had made a comment about this phrase, hire before you're ready, and how I don't like that advice. And I get a DM from Cheryl that's a thesis and a half about why she has her own perspective on this. And she was like, I want to come on Big Brave Business and we're going to chat about it. And yeah, let's just start there, which is hire before you're ready. Is this like kind of cookie cutter advice that's like a shtick that we hear all the time in entrepreneurship when we start talking about like how to grow a small business? This is advice that happens all the time. And just to set the scene for what set off Cheryl's DM, my perspective just initially on this is that I think all cookie cutter advice that's given out all the time, I think that it's a little frustrating for me to hear it because I think that a lot of the people who are giving that advice are really big established entrepreneurs who love to look back and say, this is what I would have done differently. And that is so fucking easy to say when you are making, I don't know, 7 figures or whatever. This is how I would start, because I think that a lot of times those people who are giving that advice forget what it's like when rent is due on the 1st and you're trying to figure out your next dollar. And I get frustrated when people who are making, let's say, 7 figures, just as an arbitrary number, tell people who are trying to figure out how they're going to make rent on the 1st that what they need to do is hire people, because I think what they need to do is pay rent. So that's where I get frustrated. So I don't think that's necessarily always going to be good advice. But Cheryl, you have a lot of experience with hiring people. Not all of them stick, but I am so curious to hear from you. Why did this perspective of mine set you off? Tell us all.
Oh my goodness. Now I feel very on the spot. So it didn't set me off, but if people who know me well know that whenever I hear something, I reach back out to people and I say, I have feelings. This gave me feelings. I have feelings about this. And sometimes people reach out to me and say, Cheryl, I need to tell you something because I know you'll have feelings, because I always have an opinion about something.
I
And
love this. And in my DMs with all the opinions. I love it. These are the conversations I want to have.
And I also feel, and I always tell people too, I don't come from a place that I feel like I have an opinion and my opinions. It's just that for me and my experiences, it's what I have lived. It's my truth. But I don't think it's necessarily the right advice for everybody, which is part of what set me off about not your response to the hire before you're ready, but just the hire before you're ready, like this
Concept.
generic piece of advice, that like floats around the internet. And I feel like it's, oh, okay, this is this piece of advice that everybody has to follow. You should, like, before you're ready, what does that mean? What does before you're ready even mean? And how do you know it's before you're ready? I just feel like it's
totally
silly. It's like this weird, silly concept that floats around, and I just don't buy into it. And I think hiring really goes, you have to look way back into why you're even in business in the first place to
Yeah.
decide if you even want to ever have an employee. Some people don't want an employee at all, and that's valid. And I do agree with you that finances play a huge role in that,
Yeah.
right? Like where you're at in business plays a huge role in that. What your priorities are play a huge role. So I don't like that there's just this piece of advice that floats around and people give it without really thinking about what it means. Like they don't think about what they're saying to somebody when they give that advice. And the person on the receiving end, oftentimes I see they don't know what to do with that. And so it's not helpful advice. And I don't like advice that isn't helpful. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at with it is I don't like the advice as it stands, period, if that makes sense.
It totally does. Finances are an interesting part of hiring someone because obviously you have to be able to meet that commitment of what you agree to pay them when you take them on. And that's where my mind immediately goes. And to be completely honest, it probably has to do with my own relationship with money. That when I hear the phrase hire before you're ready, I think so often it goes into when you have that extra person helping, you can get so much more done and you're going to make more money. I do believe that is true. And also, my mind immediately goes to so hire them before you really have the money to hire them. And then it's going to end up paying off. It's like a risk that you need to take that will end up paying for itself. And I think that can be true. And I also think that's so dangerous of a piece of advice to give as blanket advice. Obviously, if you know the specific person really well and you know their situation and you can tell them, like, this is going to work for you, then that's one thing. But I think to just tell people who are desperate to make this work, who are eagerly trying to break free of societal constraints of the 9 to 5 when they're trying so hard to find another way and they're looking for that magic bullet advice, I think that's where it can be dangerous. But my mind immediately goes to before you're ready financially. And I don't think that's necessarily what all people mean when they say hire before you're ready. I don't think all people who give that advice are saying before you have the money to do it, just do it and then the money will come to you. Some people definitely mean that, but not everybody.
A lot of them do mean that, though. A lot of people say, I hired my first employee before I was paying myself. And while if that works for people, that is great. That
Yeah.
if that
Yeah.
worked for you, wonderful. But I didn't do that. I believe in always paying yourself first before you pay anything else because
Yeah.
it's not sustainable to run a business if you're not paying yourself. Like you just can't do that. And it's a
Right.
bad habit to get into.
Right.
So I would not hire somebody before I could pay myself. But I think a lot of people do mean that because they look at it as, like you were saying, okay, you hire somebody else, you can get more done, you can make more money, and then you can start hiring, then you can start paying yourself. But that's not a given.
Yeah.
And it is serious business to hire a person because it's not just about your business, but you've made an obligation to somebody.
Totally.
We can't just hire
Yes.
people and then hope it's going to work out. And then if you can't afford to pay them, you let them go. That has an impact on their
Yeah.
life.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
It is interesting. And I think to a certain extent, I can see, okay, as I'm paying myself first, and I did that too, Cheryl. I'm totally with you on that. I paid myself before I paid anything. I paid myself before I paid for any business expenses, even. I put my business into debt before I didn't pay myself. I had to. And people who have been listening to this podcast and you, because you're my friend, might know this, but I started my business in the wake of a layoff, and my partner shortly after that also was laid off because of COVID. So my layoff had nothing to do with COVID. It was pre-COVID. But then once COVID hit and everything shut down, my partner lost his income as well. And his income was minimal anyway. he was working part-time at a movie theater while he was getting his master's degree. So that already wasn't enough money. And then we lost both of those monies. So my business had to keep a roof over our heads and our kids' heads, right? That had to happen. So for me, it was paying myself first out of necessity. And I definitely am a big advocate for invest in systems before you invest in people. I think that there's a lot I can do for myself by investing in automations, by investing in software, by investing. Those are things that a person could do. But if I can still keep it myself, then that's dollars I can keep here and pay a $50 a month subscription for this service or whatever it is, or $150 once for a year subscription to X automation software or whatever. And then I can keep it myself instead of paying somebody like a salary monthly. That is a huge difference. And so even as you add up multiple systems, it's still going to be less than paying a person. So I did that for as long as I could in my business. And once I brought another person on, there were a million things about it that were fantastic. Not just that I could get more done, not just that I could offload the stuff that was busy work that was keeping me from being focused on like this, my zone of genius and the stuff that I'm best at, which of course is what people say is so great about hiring. Totally agree with that. But I also was not alone in my business anymore. And business is so lonely when you're doing it by yourself. And having a person with you to be able to talk to about the things that are going on, to be able to celebrate with you when things are great, to be able to bounce ideas off of, to give ideas. It just doesn't have to just be your own
Yeah.
brain by yourself anymore. There's so much about it that it's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I have a built-in friend. And we can talk about being friends with your employees as a whole other topic, but well, we can get to that. But for better or for worse, but gosh, I was so grateful to not be alone anymore. And I didn't even realize truly how lonely I was until I hired. So that alone, like there was so much benefit that came from hiring someone. And it is also true when it comes to finances that in order to hire that person, I then paid myself less. That is definitely true. As you start making more money, you're like, oh, cool. Now I'm making 5K months. Now I'm making 10K months. Wow, I'm making $10,000 a month like myself. That's so cool. Do you know how good that feels? I've never made 10K months before I started my own business, like 10K in my own salary. That
Yeah.
was awesome, an awesome feeling. And yeah, there is a little part of you that's, do I want to make it 8.5 so that I can bring someone on part time? Well, no.
Right. Or how are you going to do it otherwise? Where is that money going to come from? Because if your business is staying at the same level, if you
Yeah.
haven't increased your revenue, then there's not extra money, or you have to be able to see what the ROI is going to be. If you bring somebody in,
Yeah.
where is that going to free you up, and how are you then going to
Yeah.
make more money so that it makes sense? Yeah, I feel like you said a lot of awesome things, and there's a lot to unpack with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like being lonely in business is a thing for sure.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
having employees around you does something for my mental health. It helps my mental health because suddenly I am not actually responsible. Yes, as the business owner, I'm always the one responsible, but in the day to day, my employees have ownership
Right.
over their jobs.
Yeah.
And just so if anybody listening who doesn't know me, I have several employees. We were a team of 6 and we had 2 people leave. And let me tell you, when you have employees and they leave,
Yeah.
that is very hard. And they left for, personal reasons and we support them, but it's really hard. But having people around you and surrounding you who are a part of a small business, employees in a small business, they're your biggest champions. They care. They care
Yeah.
about what's going on and they care about you. And they're taking things off of your plate, but they're taking stuff off of your mental stress load. All of the things that I'm trying to remember to do now, somebody else, it's their job to do the thing. And so I don't have to worry, aside from maybe the big picture stuff, I don't have to worry about the minutia of that job. And then you have another employee and it starts taking that mental load off.
Mm.
And I think that is a huge help. I
Yeah.
am pro having employees, by the way. I will just put that out there that
Yeah.
I think if it's something that you want to do, I am for it.
Totally same. Yeah.
People think that it can be scary it's like it can be like unfigureoutable, all
Yeah.
of the small things that you have to do, but it really isn't that hard. And once you've hired your first employee, it's so much easier to hire a second and a third because you've already done all that legwork. So it can be almost
Yeah.
intimidating.
I mean, like anything with business, when you do it for the first time, it's scary. And I would say there are things about hiring other team that's still scary. Like when you're trying something new, or if they're in a different state, or and you're just like, I don't know how this is going to work, going from paying people as 1099s to paying people as W2s if you're in the US, that, which we both are, that is definitely, that's a big scary thing to me. That still feels, the W2s in multiple states is, that's a 2024 newbie for Sarah, and that is totally freaky to me and overwhelming and expensive. But I think that, yeah, it is scary. I'm glad that you said that.
Yeah, it is scary. And so I do not have employees in multiple states. And when I say employee, I'm talking about W-2. So in my mind, that's how I differentiate. If I'm 1099ing someone, they're a contractor. If they're an employee, they're a W-2
Yeah.
employee. But here's the thing that I have a lot of feelings about with hiring. And that is, I feel like this is big. This is going to be like a big idea. So I feel like when most of us start a business, we do it for a reason. And most of us have a very similar reason, and that's because we want to create some freedom in our lives.
Yeah.
And but then we have the business, right? We've left corporate or come from being an employee of somebody else, and we know what that life is. And we think we don't want that anymore, right? We don't want to see our lives through the lens of how much vacation time do I have? What time do I have to wake up in the morning is based on my job. What time do I have to go to sleep at night is based on my job. Everything is based around a job when you work as an employee. And so we think, okay, we're going to have this business and we're going to have this freedom, and it's going to be, I'm going to like mold it into the thing that I want of my dreams. And then the reality of it is that we're working probably way more than we ever did. We're working so much. And so we think, okay, that's when we hire, when we're just worked ourselves to the bone and we can't take another minute because we're just on that precipice of burnout. So now that's when I hear hire before you're ready, if people aren't talking financially, in my mind, they're talking before you reach that point, before you reach that burnout point.
Right.
But I think if you are willing to or wanting to hire an employee and you are financially able to do, you don't have to wait until you're at collapse level. And so I feel like that part I can agree with when it's hire before you're ready, meaning you don't need to work 15 hours a day and being doing that consistently before you hire somebody. I had a conversation with a business coach once, and he had asked me, how many hours are you working? And I told him our normal working hours is Monday through Thursday, 9 to 2:30. That's when we work. And the reaction was like, okay, you're not putting in enough hours. Like you're telling me you want to get out of these parts of your business and you want to give that to somebody else, but you're not working. He didn't say that directly, but he looked at me like you're only working like 20, 25 hours a week and you want to offload some of the work that you're doing to somebody else. And I was like, yes, because I don't want, I am creating a life that I want.
Right.
And if I can afford to hire somebody to do something that isn't my zone of genius, so I can work on the things that I feel like will make an impact in my business, it's really no one else's business. If I want to spend the rest of my week sitting out by my pool or spending time with my family or doing things with my friends, whatever it is, that's why I have a business. I
Yeah.
didn't start my business so that I can kill myself. So I agree with that part of the hire before you're ready. But for me, only if you financially can make that happen and it makes sense to do so, because it doesn't always make sense, but sometimes it does.
What I really like about what you said before we started recording, what you had said ahead of time, is that almost, and I don't know if you used these exact words, but hiring is a form of self-care and you deserve it. And I really like that. So I'm wondering, do you want to talk about that? I don't want to just steal your two little quotes there and then me talk about it. So you tell me
Yeah,
what that
I
means.
mean, I feel like that's really going on what I was just saying. It's almost, I don't know, I feel like my generation and my parents' generation, so I was raised off of their ideas that life looks a certain way and you earn it. Like you earn it by sweat equity. Like you put in the labor.
Yeah.
And if you're not miserable, then you don't deserve the things
Oh,
that you have, right?
yeah.
You don't deserve more than 2 weeks off a year, and you don't deserve to make more than a certain amount of money. And if you're making this amount of money and you're sitting out by your pool, like, how dare you? You don't deserve that. And
Yes.
like, I challenge that, every part of it. I just think we need to change our thinking completely around how we deserve anything. You know what I mean? I don't know.
I just read Laziness Does Not Exist by Devin Price. And I just posted this on Threads at the time that we're recording this, which is mid June. I just posted this on Threads and I said, I've read over 40 books in this year. And by far, this is my absolute favorite read so far in 2024. Cannot recommend it more highly. But the whole premise of Laziness Does Not Exist is that this laziness lie, this laziness myth is out there to make us all feel like we're not doing enough, we're not good enough, we're not hardworking enough, and that if we all worked harder that we would be more deserving, and that therefore there's also the flip side of this where we can look down on people or judge people or alienate people who we deem as not working hard enough. Often in society this ends up being unsheltered people or people who are struggling with substance abuse or whatever, that these people have this problem because even institutionalized racism, right? These people have this problem because they're not working hard enough. And if they just pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and worked harder, then they would be more deserving. And this book is challenging that, of course, that we're all
I need
deserving
to
and
read
that
this book. I'd
it's
not never
so
heard
good.
of it.
And I think that it's interesting because a few years ago I started saying I'm struggling with being hardworking, being a virtue, that being hardworking has a positive or negative connotation to your value as a person. Like I'm struggling with this idea that's something we should be aspiring to, because the reality is that the people who are making the most money in society are not the hardest working, far and
Yeah.
away. They are not. The hardest working people are often people who are living under the poverty line, who are working a lot of manual labor, day labor jobs, often multiple jobs, trying to make ends meet, trying to make things work. They are the hardest working and they're making the least money. So I've been struggling with this. And also, why does that make you a better or worse person based on how hard you work? That shouldn't be what measures our value as a person. And so when I read this book, I felt so validated of, yes, this is what I've been trying to say.
Yeah.
Although I hadn't taken it to the flip side of laziness is bad. I was more focused on this myth that hardworking automatically equals good. And this is coming from someone, by the way, who's an Enneagram 3 and works. If I'm awake, I'm working. Yeah, that's why we're friends.
My goodness.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have been a person in my life who has struggled with doing anything that isn't supporting my resume or struggled with anything that I don't feel is productive. I had to, in my 30s, relearn how to play because play hasn't been a part of my life since I was not just a child, but like a relatively young child. And of course, the more that I learn about play, the more I learn like I've found ways to play my whole life, but truly just playing for the joy of playing without any attachment to the outcome, that is something I had to relearn how to do in my 30s. And I think that I say all this because I want to be able to say part of this is self-assessment of my own hardworking myths that are going on inside my head. And I loved to come back around to hiring. I loved when you said that about hiring is a form of self-care and that you deserve to have that support. And there is no badge of honor for carrying it all on your shoulders without hiring Oh,
Yes. And we treat it like a badge of honor too, overworking,
totally.
right? We say, oh, well, I got up at this time and I didn't go to bed till this time. And oh my God, I didn't eat lunch. And I can be guilty of that as well. And I try to catch myself when I'm doing it. But I will take it a step further and also say that as an employer, I try to instill the same like mindset into my employees. Like
Yeah.
this job, yeah, I need you and I rely on you, but also I don't like when employees say we're a family. And sometimes I say it and I cringe and I think, oh, because I feel like I'm not your family. Your family
Yeah.
is your family.
Yeah.
And you should be working here as little as possible and spending
Yeah.
as much
It's just
time
work.
with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like sometimes people look at that and be like, oh, don't you care about what gets done? And don't you care about these things? And I think what happens is we have a culture in my company where when we're working, we kick butt. Like we come in and we get the job done and then we get to go. And if something comes up and your kid needs something, like we're like, yes, of course, go do that. We shut down middle of December and everybody gets a paid holiday for until after New Year's because I don't want anybody choosing between having to work through the holidays or and not getting paid. I can't afford to spend time with my family because I so I have to work, I have to put hours in. We're like, no, because we really believe that like you deserve to be living a life that you love. And that's not working for somebody else. We work so that we can, in my opinion, have the things that we want to have, enjoy the life that we
Right.
have.
Yeah.
And somehow we've flipped
I love
that.
that.
We've completely flipped that, I think,
Yep.
in society. And it's no, everything is around work. And then the small little pocket of time you have left is what you get. That doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense to me. So I do feel like hiring is a way to take care of yourself because and I know like some people look at that and think, gosh, that's so selfish. Like you're just then going to pile that work on other people. But I think that when you can create a culture where you value your employees' time as much as you value your own, that's not what
Yeah.
happens. Everybody gets to win.
Yeah. I I love that you do that with paid holidays. I have done something similar where when I've had employees who get paid by the hour and it's a holiday week or they have something going on or whatever, I will say all of this can wait until after the holiday or until after you move or until you feel better or whatever. But in the meantime, track your hours as if you worked them. Just go ahead and put it in the time tracker, put it in the system. So you still will get paid for all of those hours. But I am telling you, anything that's left that we're talking about right now that's on this to-do list of yours can wait until Monday or can wait until the after the new year, whatever it is, right? In
Yeah,
that context. And I love that. I feel the same way. And I think another thing that I try to say to people on my team when they've come to me concerned about things or they're trying to justify or explain why something is going to be late or whatever is I'm always like, listen, as long as we communicate about it, it's going to be fine. That's what I ask for is communication. But the reality is, there's no such thing as an emergency in podcasting. There just isn't. It's not brain surgery, right? Like we're doing the best we can. And as long as and the best we can is relative, right? What we can do is going to depend on what else is happening in the world, in our lives, in our business, with our clients. And so we do the best we can with the circumstances that are available to us. And that's what we are getting paid to do. So as long as we can communicate with each other, with our clients, etc., it's going to be fine.
it's
It's going to be
fine.
fine. Like
Yes.
just podcasting. Yeah. And
Right.
I've
Yeah.
built a whole business off of this. It is my livelihood. So not to say that it's not quote unquote important. My business is important, but it's a podcast, right?
We say the same thing like it's yarn. We sell yarn and people love their yarn and yarn, it helps people in all sorts of way, like your knitting and your like anxiety relief and all these things. So it is important, right? But at the same time, it's going to be fine. It's going to
Yeah.
be fine if
Yeah.
something needs to get pushed out a little, if we need to rearrange things, if we need to do whatever we need to do, it's fine. We always say, it's fine. You're fine. Everything's fine. That's our motto,
Yeah.
you know?
I say that to myself all the time. And it's so funny because I heard my mom doing that a few months ago, self soothing and saying, you're fine. You're okay. Kim, you're okay. Our name's Kim. And I said, I do that. It's okay. You're okay. Everything's okay. So I love that. That's so fun. I wonder how many people do that. If you're listening and you are a self-soother that talks out loud and says that same refrain, please let us know. Yeah, I think that's a good one. And I like to, and I think this kind of fits in with exactly the two examples we just gave of building a culture. But I think another thing that I really try to do is make sure that it's very clear to people that work with me, to my team, and also my clients, frankly, that yes, there's value here. And also, there are other things that are definitely more important. And so, what I need is just, again, coming back to the communication piece, what I need is just to be able to communicate clearly in both directions with you about the things that are more important. And I actually also have this with students because I teach part time at my university here, the local university here. And I have students who come to me in a panic. Recently, I had a student whose husband went into the ER and she was waiting in the waiting room for news. And she sent me a message from her phone and said, I didn't bring my laptop. I wasn't thinking and I'm afraid that I'm going to miss the deadline to turn in my work tonight. If I have to, I can go home and get my laptop so that I can submit it tonight before midnight. But I'm wondering if I can have an extension to tomorrow. And I was like, okay, listen, there are things that are so much more important than this. So here's what I'm going to tell you to do. And I can't speak for your other professors or your other classes, but for this class, put it out of your head until you're home and you and your husband are good. Put it out of your head. It's not important. And when you are in a place where you have the bandwidth for this class to be important again, you let me know and we'll work it out because there are so many options. First of all, I can be flexible with you until the end of the semester, but even if it's bigger than that, the university has policies in place that will protect you as a student that we can have up to 12 months to get this class sorted out for you. Like it isn't important. Be with your husband, be where you need to be, and that's not here. And so I feel like I do that there too, and it carries over. It's like the culture building that has been such a part of what culture do I want to build at PodFox really carries over into then everything that I do, because then when I'm working with other people or even being friends with other people, I'm like, there are things that are just more important. I had a friend who apologized to me the other day for being quote unquote MIA, but she just had surgery last week. And I was like, you get a free pass. Like you have nothing to apologize for. I am following up with you because you just had surgery. So it is interesting that when you start thinking about what kind of culture do I want to build and what are the ramifications. And on that note, one more thing I want to say about this is that I was talking with another friend of mine who also teaches part-time for the same university. And she has a very strict no late work policy. And I was talking to her about my feelings of this is how I handle things with students. Every single request for an extension is a yes until the end of the semester. And in fact, you don't even have to ask me if you just turn it in late. I'm not going to ask. I'm not going to question you. I'm not going to penalize you. I'm just going to grade it. You paid money to take this class. I want you to get something out of it. And if you did the work, I want you to get the grade. That's the honest truth. Like, I don't care. And she was advocating, I don't have the bandwidth to do late work. Like, here's all of the other demands that I have. This is how many students are taking this class. This is how much the grading is. Like, it has to be on a schedule in order for me to manage it. And I said, I can respect that. I can respect that as a reason. And she said, plus, what lesson is that teaching that student as far as like the real world? And I looked at her and I said, I hope that the lesson is that sometimes there's more important things, and that I hope that by me giving that student grace, they will then pay it forward and the world will just be a nicer, more empathetic place to each other. So we can all stop worrying about the urgency of, are we showing up enough? I hope that's the impact that it has, that actually it helps that student build grace and empathy that they pass on. What lesson are they learning?
When I hear anybody say, like, when they get out into the real world, I hear that so often. And I think, but isn't the real world what we make it? Like, why is the real world this horrible, terrible place where like only bad things ever happen and you better get in line or else it's gonna chew you up and spit you out? Like, why does the real world have to be terrible? Like we put that on the world, I think
Oh my
sometimes.
gosh, it's
Like
like Fallout. I don't know if you are familiar with Fallout, the game
a
slash
little
TV
bit,
show.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So she had the main character in the show, it grew up in this bunker underground during like nuclear war. It doesn't matter. But point is, there are events that lead her to go out into the real world above ground. And it is a terrible place. That's what I'm thinking of when you're talking about this, that like these, like anybody who's like a student or has created their own kind of lifestyle, like entrepreneurship, even that it's like you're living in a bunker and that if you go out in the real world, this is what it's.
You'll see. And it's like
Yeah.
a punishment. Oh, you're going to see when you get out into the real world, this isn't going to fly. And it's like,
Also, on that note, that's also, and I have never thought about this until you just challenged this, but that's also telling students that their life is not real. And I don't like that feeling. Like my kids are all three college dropouts, but if they were still in school, I would not want them to be told that their life isn't real. Their experiences are not real. This is what, like practice for
yeah,
their real life? Like this is real life. It's the whole life.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes. Yeah. And there are plenty of people in the real world that think differently, that we don't all
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that things have to be a certain way. Yeah, but you're right. It's like telling people everything that you're doing now really has no value and no relevance and doesn't even matter. It's
Yeah.
just you're practicing for when you get out into the real place,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
also horrible and scary and will kill you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes. And you're
okay.
right. There are people who think differently and want to do differently. And I think that's really what we're trying to do here with Big Brave
Yes.
Business is like, for those of us who want to do things differently, let's have the conversations about what that can look like and how to do things differently.
Yes.
I love this. And this definitely took a really interesting turn, Cheryl. And I just think there's a million things we could talk about. So please, literally anytime you have a feeling or you have feelings about something that you hear on the podcast or that either of us post online or that somebody else posts online and you're like, Sarah, this would be a big brave business conversation, you have to come back on and let's keep talking about this.
I will.
But I love to end all of these conversations with a fun question, and it can be work related or personal, it does not matter, because we're whole people. So what is something that's making you happy right now?
Oh my goodness. My pool is making me happy right now. Okay, if we have a minute.
Yeah.
So, one thing that my business allowed for me to do was it allowed for my husband and I to purchase our dream home about a year and a half ago. And we are not huge travelers. I don't know, we're just busy people. And so I really wanted a home that I could make my backyard into an oasis. That is my vacation spot. So when I wake up in the morning, it's there. When I get home from work, it's there. And we're just right in that time of year where the pool's open. It's beautiful. And I love spending time outside, relaxing. I'm an introvert, so I just like my quiet time, listening to the birds by the pool.
That sounds fantastic. I love
Yes.
that.
Thank you.
Um,
What about you? What's making you happy, Sarah?
a lot of things. I had a really crazy start to the month of June at the time. Again, this isn't coming out until July, but it's been really busy, hectic, crazy. And I am so grateful. So, this is making me happy that I have the community in my life and the culture that I've built in this business with my clients and my community and my team. Last week, in the name of self care, I needed to clear my entire calendar. And that is really tough for me to do. And if you've been listening to this podcast, thank you. But you've also probably heard me talking about I've had a really crazy meeting schedule the past couple of months. And I would say I've been in a really busy season since February. And in February, we had an event that we ran virtually. And so I thought through PodFox, and I thought that was why I was working so many hours. And then just things just kept happening that and progressing and exciting things that my meeting calendar has been absolutely insane. And that plus doing client work and adding more clients and adding two team members. And I just have been working so many hours. And the idea that I could clear my calendar seems based on how I've been working, that seems like it should have been impossible. And instead, I was met with so much empathy and grace. And actually, it was very easy to do. It was very easy to clear my calendar. And I still met client expectations for getting episodes posted or whatever. And my own podcast went live. I didn't do as much marketing for my own two podcasts that I host as I normally would. I let my guests know why. I was like, hey, your episode's coming live. Just want you to know I will catch up on the marketing, but I'm doing the best I can right now. And just again, the understanding, the empathy. And it's not like everyone was like, oh, Sarah, they're coddling me. It was just easy. It was just easy to do. You need to do what you need to do. I had one person say to me when I cleared a particular meeting, I had one person respond to me and say, wow, if you're moving meetings, I know it's big. So just know I'm sending you love. And so it was just easy to do. And the people in my life and in my community are, and I've noticed this when I've taken vacations in the past too, although those were planned. But when people say things to me, I'm so glad that you're doing what you need to do to take care of yourself. I have surrounded myself with this community of people who believes the same thing, just what you were just saying, that there are people who want to do things differently. And I'm just so grateful for that. And when I say, by the way, that I had a crazy start to the beginning of June, just for a little preview, some stuff was wonderful and planned. And some stuff was not wonderful and not planned. And all of it happened at the same time. So in a 10-day period, my car lease was up. So I got a new car planned and I love it. And it's so fun and it's great. And also, I had a particular milestone that Eric and I had agreed to. Once we got to this point, we were going to get new living room furniture. We have never bought a new living room set. We have always thrifted or like inherited from other people getting new living room furniture. So we have never picked out a set for ourselves and had a matching set. We've been saying our living room is starting to feel like a dorm room. We are middle-aged people with grown children. We're not living in dorms, and we've bought furniture for other rooms, but for the living room, that was just such a thing. And so planned, but happened in this same period of time, had a bit of a landscaping crisis where our, what is that called? Irrigation system has been popping leaks. And so we have had like a maintenance company coming out to patch and repair it. And this has happened a couple of times. And one of the things that they had to dig up and rebuild disturbed a nest of cockroaches. And we had cockroach infestation. I can't believe I'm sharing this on the podcast, but I will, because what, life is real. We had a cockroach infestation in our downstairs bathroom. Our downstairs bathroom is based in my office, like it's inside my office. Thankfully, we never really saw them outside of the bathroom. Now, I'm not dumb enough to think that none of them left the bathroom, but I am grateful that I never saw any alive outside of that bathroom. When I say an infestation, and I'm just going to say this, it is as bad as you were thinking. And it was terrible. And so we had all these different appointments and whatnot for landscapers and exterminators, and our furniture got delivered and we had to get the old furniture out and all of these things that all happened in a 10-day period. Now, I'm happy to say that I have seen nothing alive in that respect in over a week at this point. And this is the first day I'm brave enough to work in my office again since this happened. So here we are recording this, and I am in my office and I'm nervous, but we've deep cleaned in here. I feel confident that there's no surprises to a certain degree, but it's been hard to make myself come back into this office. And that feels bad because this is my space. This is my almost a sanctuary, a holy space where I've built this business and I spend a lot of my time, and it's a happy place for me, and it feels desecrated a bit. So it's just been, listen, it's been horrible. And needless to say, I was like, I'm not recording podcast episodes. I'm not getting on sales calls. I'm not like, I can't do this. First of all, I can't work in my office. I'm scared. Second of all, I have all these appointments. And third of all, just the emotional and mental bandwidth, like it's not there.
Yeah.
So although that all sounds like it's weird to say that brought me joy, but what brought me joy is how much control I really did have over my calendar to be able to clear it. in a season where I have felt like I'm a slave to my calendar, I actually really, it's a choice because it was very easy to clear it when I needed to clear it. And also, I'm so grateful for the people who are in my life and in my community. And some of the stuff that happened in the past 10 days is glorious. We're so happy. Dream
Yeah.
couch, sectional, dream car, like so thrilled and happy. So, yeah, there's that. That's my
Yes.
story. That's my
Oh my
June story.
goodness. Oh my goodness. I'll just add, no, I did not go through the same 10 days from hell that you went through, but we've been having some major stresses here. We had like too many floods at one of my spaces, and we've just had 40 packages go missing. Like we've had all of these fires, like product coming in late and all of these things that I'm running around like a crazy person. And my daughter, she's 30, she's pregnant with her first baby, and we're
Wow.
hosting a baby shower not this weekend, but next weekend at my house. And it never occurred to me because I don't work long hours. I don't usually feel the need to take a lot of time off because I feel
Yeah.
like I really do have a good balance. However, I didn't take any time off to prepare. And I realized, oh my God, I am going to absolutely be a lunatic if I don't take some time off, at least like the week before the shower to get everything ready, do all the things. And so I told my team, you guys, I'm really sorry. I'm going to need to take this week off, like meaning next week. And they were
Yeah.
like, okay, bye, no problem. And it's
Isn't
like,
that wild? Yes,
it's
that's exactly
wild.
how I felt. It was like, seriously?
Like, what do you mean? I'm like, but what about all the things? And they're like, yeah, we'll do them. Like,
Isn't it
you
so
know,
funny to think we work so hard to create this culture for the people in our community, in our team,
yeah,
that then they can give it back?
I know. Which is why
Oh,
I'm so pro employee. It's such a blessing
yeah.
if you can get to a space where, where you can bring that into your business because it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
hear you. And I feel like there's so many big, wonderful things happening in your life, Cheryl. I'm so thrilled for you about your new space, about your grandbaby, about your wonderful pool, your so many great things. So I'm so thrilled for you, and I'm happy we had a chance to chat today on the podcast. And if you want to connect with me or Cheryl, which of course you do, because we are full of feelings and ideas. So of course you do. That information is all, of course, going to be in the description, in the show notes. And thank you so much for being here, Cheryl. Thank you so much for being here to you listening. And we'll see you next week.